In this edition of Careers That Matter, I'm joined by Allison Macfarlane, a professor and the director of the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs at UBC. Allison, welcome.
Thank you.
A professor and the director, what exactly does your job look like? What are your responsibilities?
I have meetings, lots of meetings.
You have to take a degree in meetings?
No, yeah, right. I direct the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs. That means I, run the school, work with the staff. I'm the boss of the faculty. And we make decisions together, that kind of thing. But I'm also a professor. I teach. I do research as well. So.
Do you work 36 hours a day then?
Yeah, kind of.
Really? Like, the responsibilities are massive when you start to lay it all out like that.
Yeah, it's busy. Things are busy. Yeah.
What does a typical day look like for you then? Or is there such a thing?
There isn't such a thing, actually. Every day is different, which is nice, right? I mean, that's what I like. I don't want to do the same thing every day. So some days are very busy, like today, lots of meetings. Had meetings with folks from Global Affairs Canada this morning. They came out to see us, and budget meetings in the middle of the day. Talked to an investor, gave them advice on nuclear power, small modular reactors. Talked to reporters. That's often what I do, and try to keep up with everything.
And then you also have staff that report to you.
I do, yes.
How do you find the time to put together your lectures then as a professor?
I don't teach too much. Right now I'm a faculty lead for a capstone course for a group of students, a team of students working on a project for a capstone course. So it's a lighter load, which is good.
Is this 7 days a week in your head? Maybe not in...
it is.
You cannot check out, can you?
No.
Is that a good thing?
It's good and bad. It is important for everybody to check out every now and then.
Mm-hmm. So, where did you go to high school?
I went to Avon High School in Avon, Connecticut, outside of Hartford, Connecticut.
So you grew up in the shadow of some Ivy League universities. Did you have your mindset on an academic career, or what were your plans when you left secondary school?
Gosh, that's a good question. I mean, I wanted to go to university, which I did, but I don't know that I knew what I really wanted to do at that point in time.
What did you start studying?
Well, I knew I wanted to do science. I didn't know which science. Except that I knew I didn't want to do physics. I feel like you're either born with a physics brain or a chemistry brain. I got the chemistry brain. My sister got the physics brain. She has a PhD in physics.
So you did go into chemistry?
I minored in chemistry in the end, but my major was geology.
Okay. So where did that lead you?
Eventually it led me to graduate school. And more adventures. I did my PhD work in Nepal, in the Himalayan mountains.
Studying?
Studying the formation of the Himalayan mountains.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was life-changing in many ways, and ended up with a PhD from MIT. And then I ended up working with archaeologists for a year.
In what region of the world?
Ecuador.
My, oh my, your educational career had already moved you around the world to some pretty exotic locations.
Yes. And while I was a graduate student, a geology graduate student, I got to do some field work in Greece. That was nice. In the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got your PhD. Upon getting that designation, what was your next posting?
I became a professor of geology at George Mason University, just outside of Washington, D.C., which I did for a few years, and then decided that I wanted to change fields.
That's a big decision.
Substantially, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was helped by getting what was then called a Bunting Institute Fellowship at Radcliffe College, which is adjacent to Harvard. And I spent a year there, but I spent most of that year at the Harvard's Kennedy School of Government in the Belfer Center for Science and International Security. And I worked with a fellow named John Holdren, who ended up becoming President Obama's science advisor.
That became an important connection for you.
Yeah. And that I stopped studying mountain formation, and I started studying nuclear waste disposal and the disposition of plutonium declared excess to nuclear weapons needs. And so I started down a nuclear path, and that was in 1996, and I never turned back.
It was obviously fascinating for you.
Yeah.
So you moved beyond that. What other postings did you have between there, when you started exploring all this nuclear waste, plutonium, and so on, that have now led you to where you are out at UBC?
So I did a number of different fellowships. In some senses, I did a second PhD in nuclear policy, if you want to look at it that way. So I spent a year at the Bunting Institute, then I spent a year at Stanford University, then I spent 2 years back at the Kennedy School of Government, and then I spent 3 or 4 years at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Security Studies program, and then moved back to George Mason University as a faculty member in environmental science and policy. And while I was there, I got a couple of opportunities to work with government. One was on President Obama's Blue Ribbon Commission on America's Nuclear Future, which was probably the most fun thing I've done in my career.
What made it so fun?
It was a bipartisan commission looking at what to do with our nuclear waste. If a disposal facility at Yucca Mountain isn't going to work, what should we do? How should we approach this? And so we had former senators on the commission, we had former congressmen, we had people from industry, we had a couple academics, other experts. Everybody got along, we all learned from each other. We had so many meetings where we heard from all sorts of people. We heard from the nuclear industry, the anti-nuclear folks. We heard from government folks. We traveled to Sweden and to Finland, and we heard from Canada 3 times because Canada had really thought through carefully what they were doing with nuclear waste. We traveled to Japan and Russia and France and the UK. And so we really spent time carefully learning, and we put out a report which to this day, we put out a report in 2012, and to this day it is really good advice for the US on what it should do.
It became the roadmap.
It became a roadmap which the US has not followed, but Congress doesn't really agree on much these days. So then, that finished in January of 2012, and in May of 2012, I got a phone call asking me to be if I would consider being the chairman of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the nuclear regulator, which is a Senate-confirmed position. And so I went into that, was confirmed by the Senate, and then I found myself leading a 4,000-person government agency, which I did for 2.5 years, and then went back to academia.
So after these remarkable postings that you had along the way, what was it that led you to come to UBC?
Well, it was this opportunity to sort of shape a brand new School of Public Policy and Global Affairs at the University of British Columbia. So the school was 3 or 4 years old, 3 years old when I interviewed. I waited for a year and then came in the 5th year of the school in the middle of the pandemic. So it was a bit of a rough start. Didn't get to meet a lot of my faculty in person for a few years. But now we're up and running.
And where are you wanting to direct the efforts of the school? Because it's a big topic.
It is, and we're a broad faculty. We work on all sorts of things. We really focus internationally. Half our students are international, so we have a 2-year professional master's program. And I want us to be one of the best schools of public policy and global affairs in North America, and I think we can be.
So when you look at your career, I hear the things that you've done. You've uprooted, you've moved around, you've taken, I'm sure at times, leaps of faith in
Yes.
your own ability to be able to take on this new posting or assignment. What is it about you that made you be able to follow this path? Because I think many people would shy away from it.
Yeah, it's a good question because I don't consider myself to be a real risk taker, but I guess I am.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, one thing that really helped was getting a lot of advice. So before I'd make one of these big moves, I talked to a lot of people and just got their views on whether they, what they thought. Was this a good idea, a bad idea? And that was really helpful. So I didn't feel like I was just, walking into nothing. It helped me think through some of the implications of, what I was going to accept and move on to.
But you still made took those steps. And when you look back on them, I gather you're satisfied that it was the right step.
Yeah, I don't think I'd change anything.
Wow. If you were to talk to a young person who said, wow, I want to follow in your footsteps, what would you tell them would be something that they need to be aware of about themselves or the path forward that could help them in some way have a career like yours?
I would say that, don't have you might want to have a bit of a plan going forward, but don't make it a plan written in stone. Be flexible. Be ready to take, for the road to take a dog leg, and go and be ready to go with that. And I'd also say, make sure you have a good, solid training under your belt. I think it really helped that I had a PhD in science, and I had a lot of confidence going in that I knew something about something, and that helped.
Well, I can imagine with the PhD in science, you also had a belief and understanding that, this is the way that the world actually works. Not in theory, it works this way.
Yeah.
It's got to be based on the science.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in geology, we actually deal with the way the world really works, the way the Earth really works, not theoretical physics or theoretical chemistry. We look at what actual physics and chemistry really kind of happens. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for giving us a glimpse into your world. It
You're
sounds
welcome.
like it's very busy, but also incredibly interesting and rewarding.
It is. Thanks.